Konnichiwa! Hello and welcome, one and all, to the Super GT preview show here on Motorsport.tv. Unbelievably, we've come to the very end of the season now. We're about to get ourselves ready for the final race of the season at Motegi. And it's going to be a very interesting showdown between the TGR Tom's crew of Shotsuboy and Ritoma Miyata and the NDDP racing team of Katsuma Sachio and Mitsunori Takaboshi. We are very excited about the season finale prospect. So our two commentators on Motorsport TV, myself, Jake Sanson, and my colleague, Jamie Klein, we're going to go through the final race of the season in preparation, in preview to what is said to be a great showdown. Hi, Jamie. How's it all going?
Hi, Jake. Yeah, all good, thank you. Just back from Suzuka last weekend for the final round of Super Formula, of course, and now we turn our attentions to Super GT, two season finales in the space of a week, and we had a brilliant finale finally last weekend at Suzuka, so hoping for more of the same at Motegi, another Honda-owned track, of course, but really, as you mentioned, it's all about the battle between Toyota and Nissan as the two protagonists as we head into the final round, and I think it's really all to play for between those two crews.
And of course, while you talk about the Super Formula finale last week at Suzuka, it does have relevance for this weekend because, of course, the champion in Super Formula at Suzuka was crowned as Ritoma Miyata. And no surprises, he's still leading the championship in Super GT with a 7-point lead over the NDDP Nissan crew. So we could be on the verge of history here this weekend, Jamie, at Motegi in Super GT. Ritoma Miyata could be about to join a very exclusive club of drivers to have won Super Formula and Super GT in the same year. What an achievement that'll be.
Yeah, it would be quite remarkable. I mean, chances to do the double come around very, very rarely. The last was Naoki Yamamoto in 2020, and he also did the same in 2018. But before that, only, I think, 3 other drivers have done it. So Miyata could only become the 5th driver to do it in the history of Super GT being the newest series, of course. And I think it is important that you mentioned that. I think we see this time and time again, the momentum from one championship, especially Super Formula, I think carrying into Super GT is a trend we see, because I think if Miyata had been defeated last weekend at Suzuka, of course he's a professional and he wouldn't let it impact his preparations, but I think just to be in that positive frame of mind and to feel that you're not just like trying to get a consolation prize, that you've already got the biggest prize as a driver in the form of the Super Formula title under your belt, and now you can almost lift a little bit of that pressure, rather than if it was the opposite situation, you'd feel that you had to get the Super GT title just so you have something. But actually, Miyata in the positive of those two situations, and I'm sure that's going to lift the whole mood of the team heading into this weekend, the whole Tom's crew. Of course, many of the engineers and crew are the same in both teams as well as the drivers. So I think that is an important point to mention. I think they are going into this finale with the best possible frame of mind, and they've got everything to gain and nothing to lose, really.
It's also worth mentioning, I think, we talk about Ritoma Miyata as having the chance to win the double, but he's not the only driver in the crew, and we should talk about his teammate Shotsuboy as well, who's been an integral part of the TGR Tom's crew being at the front. Some of his stints this year have been masterful, so even though he's not been able to have a go for the Super Formula title, he's been instrumental, really, in making sure that this 7-point lead has come their way.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say it's been a pretty much even contribution from both drivers. I mean, when Toyota put this crew together at the start of the year, let's not forget that last year it was Shotsuboy sharing a car with Giuliano Alesi, which was a very, very difficult and frustrating year for Tsuboi, who won the championship the previous year with Yuki Sekiguchi. So he got used to being in a position to fight for the championship and to be at the front of the field, had a year of basically being able to not do that. And then Toyota putting together, essentially I think it's probably fair to say it's 2 best drivers in the same car in the whole of its stable, really to give themselves the best possible chance of getting the title back after losing it to Nissan last year. So I think clearly that's paid off. I think Tsuboi and Miyata have a great chemistry, both very similar age. Tsuboi a couple of years older, but they both raced in Formula 3 together, with Tom's as well, in fact. So both of them very well known to the team. Everything is very smooth, and that is also an important element of success in Super GT, is the communication with the engineers and the drivers' preferences being similar enough so that you can create a car that both drivers can feel comfortable in, which I think is something we've seen is not always the case with other crews. But certainly for Savoy Miata, really a match made in heaven, I would say, and one that's obviously now on the cusp of delivering the title.
Well, they're not the only crew that can win the championship this weekend at the Mobility Resort in Motegi. Let's talk about the NDDP racing crew in the Nissan. Katsumasa Chiyo and Mitsunori Takaboshi, they've been very strong over the course of the season. They've only failed to score once, which of course you can also say about the Tom's Toyota crew. But they've had a first, a second and a third, 3 visits to the podium and 2 other top 5 finishes. They're only 7 points back. If they were to win and the Tom's crew were third or lower, they would be champion.
Yes, indeed. I mean, it's still very, very open because we've seen as well that the Nissan last year, the Nissan Z in its first visit to Motegi was very, very strong. Both the Impel car that won the championship and the NDDP car that obviously came very close, but unfortunately just fell short at the final hurdle. With Chiyo and Takaboshi in their first year, now in their second year together. I think both of them have become top-line drivers, especially Takaboshi, I think, has made good progress this year. I think last year was more about Chiyo's brilliance, so I think he's maintained that same high level, but I think Takaboshi has also taken a step forward with his second season on Michelin tyres. I think it's worth mentioning as well that there was a test at Motegi in early September, and actually the pace of the Michelin cars there, the number 3 car, was very, very impressive. And while we will have a slightly cooler conditions this weekend because so much time has passed since September, I think that is a good sign for them. And likewise, the Tom's Toyota was a little bit off the pace, so they'll be having to hope that the conditions are sufficiently different to give them a chance to come back from that. And of course, they've got the sort of momentum on their side, not only from the Super Formula title win, but also from the last race at Autopolis, which was a brilliant performance by both of the 2 leading crews. Really, at one stage, it seemed like Chiyo and Takaboshi might win the race with the heaviest car in the field and the only car in the field with a fuel flow restrictor. Of course, this weekend, no more fuel flow restrictors. The success ballast is completely gone, so it's a totally even fight for the first time since the opening round of the season. So that's something to really look forward to, and we're finally going to get this chance to see really for the first time since the start of the year, and that was a wet race, let's not forget. So this may be the only time really we get a completely clear picture of who is really the fastest when the chips are down.
For those who want a motorsport miracle, there could be one in the offing as well, because there are actually 3 crews with a mathematical chance of becoming champion. The third crew in the equation, rather fittingly, is a Honda. So we have a Toyota, a Nissan and a Honda in the title fight. It's the ARTA crew number 16 of Fukuzumi and Otsu. They had a terrible start to the season, only picking up a few points here and there, but with a third in Fuji, a win on the second appearance at Suzuka, and a second in Autopolis, they now suddenly have a mathematical chance of getting the job done. But let's be fair here, Jamie. They have to win the race to stand any chance of becoming the champions. Second place will not do. They have to win the race, and they have to hope that the Toms and Nissan crews don't score well.
Yeah, exactly. It's a real long shot, and it's a shame for Fukuzumi and Otsu about what happened at Autopolis, where Otsu was actually leading the race. I mean, they controlled the race from pole the whole distance, but just in that final stint, I spoke to Otsu after the race, and he mentioned that they weren't sure which tyre compound to choose for the final stint, and they made the wrong decision. They went with a soft tyre for the last stint, which didn't work out. It didn't last long enough, and that allowed a charging Ritomo Miata to come at Otsu and then make the crucial pass for the lead, which turned it from a really close title fight to a one with the third place Honda, the ARTA machine, having a chance, but a fairly faint one. As you said, it's a 16-point disadvantage with only 21 up for grabs. So even if the ARTA car gets pole, then a 6th place finish for the Tom's Toyota would be enough to prevent them from being able to win the title. But still, it's the last race for the Honda NSX this weekend, as we're going to get onto in a bit more detail in a moment. And for ARTA as well, it's been a really up and down year for that team, with both cars, the number 8 car, of course, now out of contention after its miserable weekend at Autopolis. That's the only way to describe it, I think. So I think for ARTA as well, even if they don't win the championship, I think to finish the year with another win and just kind of lay down a marker for next season. Of course, everything changes when Honda brings in the Civic, but certainly for the time being, ARTA proving they have the speed, maybe not the consistency, but still they'll be giving it everything until the checker flag falls.
Yeah, let's talk about the Honda NSX GT. This is the last race of its 10-year stretch in the championship. Of course, it made its debut back in 2014. It won its first title with Naoki Yamamoto and Jenson Button in 2018. So it's been a long, long run for this particular car, but obviously it's the end of an era. It's going to be replaced for next season. So Honda really wants to bow out of the season. If they can't win the title, then clearly with a win. So that's obviously going to be very important for the brand on essentially their home turf.
Yeah, absolutely. I think anything less than a victory for one of the Honda crews, I think, would be a big disappointment for Honda. I think the NSX was considered by many. I mean, we knew at the start of the year that it was going to be the last year for the car because the Civic was revealed back in January. But I think many felt that this was going to be the year for the NSX. It looked so quick in testing. They had 4 cars on Bridgestone tyres, which is one more than they had last year. So an extra car on the benchmark tyre. Some really good driver pairings, not least of all for Kazumi and Otsu, who I think have proven to be a real surprise package together in that number 16 car. But for some reason, I think it's just every Honda team has had its fair share of problems, and none of them have been terribly consistent. I mean, the 16 car has been consistent in the second half of the year. But as you mentioned earlier on, they had a really poor first couple of races and they just gave themselves too much work to do, really, although they still do have a chance. But I think if any of the Honda crews could have been a little bit more consistent, I have to think about the number 17 as well, getting disqualified at Sugo, being a massive blow to their championship hopes in particular as well. But I think Honda will look back on this season as, with the NSX Type S, this is the second year of the update they did at the start of last year. And it really seemed at the second half of last year that they had the car to beat, really, for the final couple of races. And it just didn't quite translate into the form many were expecting at the start of this season. So I think there will be frustration if they don't at least end with a win. And of course, as we head into this new era with the Civic as well, I think there's a lot of question marks over whether that car will be competitive. So Honda might be a little bit rueful that they weren't able to make more of the clear performance of the NSX just because of penalties, of incidents and things going wrong that have relegated them to this kind of outsider role for this title showdown.
While we're talking about milestones in the Super GT series finale, we should probably mention the end of an era. It's going to be the final race, the 126th start in Super GT across the previous era of JGTC and Super GT in its current guise of Yuji Tachikawa, the 48-year-old legend who was the champion in JGTC in 2001. He's been a 2-time Super GT champion in 05 and 13. His first win goes all the way back to Okayama in the Supra. His last win was 4 years ago in the Lexus at Fuji. It's going to be a really, really difficult time in 2024 being on the starting grid in Super GT and not seeing him. He's been there every single season this century. I mean, it's quite an astonishing thing that we're going to be seeing the very last of Yuji Tachikawa this weekend. Yeah,
he's almost ageless, I would say. I mean, you look at him and you wouldn't think that he's 48 years old. It's remarkable, really. And whilst I think Seramo's had a bit of a hard time, he and Hiroaki Ishiura, a bit of a hard time really since they changed to the Supra in 2020, really only 2 podiums in that time. And the last podium now being more than 2 years in the rearview mirror. But I think certainly since Tachikawa announced his retirement mid-season, that there has been a noticeable uplift in performance for that car. And I think there is a sense that, maybe a bit of extra motivation and a little bit of, that extra that extra drive you get when you know that the end is nigh and you haven't got many more chances to try and get one final victory together. Like you say, you have to go back to 2019 for their last win at that team, and for Tachikawa and Ishihara. So it's going to be difficult with Motegi. I think they had a good race at Autopolis. Fourth place was their best of the year, but of course still with quite a success ballast advantage, which they won't have anymore. And it is a difficult track for the Supra. So I don't think it's very likely that they're going to sign out with a victory, as great as that would be for his fans and for Super GT generally. I think it's probably a little bit too much to expect, but certainly Tachikawa-san, I'm sure he'll be doing the Q2 and the opening stint as ever, trying to get one more pole position, and I'm sure he'll just be enjoying it as much as possible, and not worrying too much about the result. Of course, nothing left to fight for because they're not in the championship fight by any stretch. But I think it would just be a great opportunity for his fans to see him one final time. I think it was really nice that he gave his fans the opportunity to see him, at several races in the second half of the year potentially for the final time. And but now this really is the curtain call, and like you say, it's going to be strange to line up next season with him not in that Zent liveried Ceramo car. There'll be a new face alongside Hiroaki Ishihara, and I think I'm sure Tachikawa-san is still going to be an integral part of that team and of the Toyota stable. But unfortunately, all good things have to come to an end. He's been, like you say, there since 1999. So 25 brilliant seasons for that team. He's driven all the GT500 cars basically since going back to the original Supra. And he's also been driving the next year's Supra as a development driver. So he's still playing a role in developing Toyota and pushing them forward, even though he won't actually be racing that car next year. So clearly he still has something to offer, just sadly won't be from the cockpit of a car actually being driven in anger any longer.
It's a real shame, and we really hope that he bows out with a 20th pole position and a 25th pole position and a 20th race victory. It would be wonderful to see if he could do it. And it would add a little bit of romance to the season finale. Speaking of the season finale, obviously there is one team that is pretty much guaranteed the championship title going into this weekend, and that's in the GT300 category. We thought we were going to have a really open house playing field at the end of Suzuka. In Sugo, we thought the championship was done with the Up Garage team taking their third win in a row, with Satomoto Yopet having a fuel issue on the very last lap. They ran out of fuel with just a few yards to go and dropped to second. So we thought with 3 wins in the season, Up Garage had it done. Then they got disqualified from Sugo and didn't score an Autopolis. And it turned out to be back-to-back victories for Satomoto Yopet Supra in the Green Brave car. So they're now 20 points clear of Inging going into the final race of the season with 21 points on offer. It's pretty much done.
Yeah, only pole and victory with the Saitama Toy Pet car not scoring would be good enough for the Inging squad of Hibiki Taira and Yui Tsutsumi. It was a great battle between those two crews at Autopolis, but the 52 crew, despite the fact they were carrying the higher amount of success ballast, the most in the field, in fact, they managed to get the strategy right. The Inging car opting for a more conventional strategy, but the 52 going for the slightly riskier move of only one pit stop with a tyre change. Of course, you have to make 2 pit stops, but it gave them the track position, and then Hiroki Yoshida, the local man, was able to just hold off the Inging car all the way to the checkered flag. And I remember at the time we were saying there's no way he's going to be able to hang on, because the Inging car looks so much faster, but somehow he found a way. A really incredible drive, a second victory in a row for that car after the Up Garage Honda was disqualified at Sugo. And when you're that consistent, and the other major contenders also having troubles of their own. I mean, look at Kondo Racing. They've had 2 races where they only scored a single point. The Study BMW's charge sort of fell off a cliff after Fuji in August, and then the Up Garage car as well disqualified at Sugo, and then the getting taken out at Autopolis, where they didn't look that competitive anyway. So that's the net result, really. It's this championship's all about consistency. We talk about it all the time, and the 52 car has been the most consistent of the front runners, and now they only need a single point from the Motegi weekend to guarantee themselves a title. And of course, it could all be over on Saturday, because if the Indian car isn't on pole, then that is game over as well. They need the point for pole to keep any chance alive into Sunday's race. So it's quite possible that, much like Max Verstappen in Formula One, we could have a Saturday title celebration this weekend in Super GT as well.
Very true. I've only got 2 more questions for you before we wrap it all up, Jamie. We obviously know which crew is going to be the most deserving for the team of the year, because obviously that will be decided in both categories. But in the world of Super GT, where really strong driver performances are key to making these things come together, and consistency and good performances and, good discipline and good control and good poise and guys are all part of the game. I want to ask you, firstly, in GT 500, who's been your stellar driver of the season? Who's really put on a bit of a show as far as you're concerned? Who's been the star turn?
Yeah, it's a difficult question. But yeah, partly because the tire, things like tire selection and even just what brand of tire you're on and the conditions and all these things have an impact. But I think when you look across the first 7 races of the year, I think, to be honest with you, I think every time that Ritomo Miata's got in the car, that car has been the 36 Tom's car. That is, yeah. That car has been going forwards. He's done some brilliant overtaking moves. Of course, there's been the 2 wins, but also, getting some solid points on the board, even in quite unpromising situations. And I think he's been really, really impressive. I think the other one I would probably highlight is Naoya Kazumi, actually, because I think he's really come into his own as a lead driver in the second, well, what should be the second ARTA car, but has actually been the de facto lead car. And he's so quiet and understated, but he's had 2 pole positions. He's driven his stints perfectly. I struggle to remember a time that Fukuzumi has not been pretty much bang on the pace. And he's really impressed me this year as well. So I'd probably say those 2, Miata and Fukuzumi, just in terms of the consistency and just also kind of leaving an impression in terms of just the sheer, wow factor, the speed they show. I mean, those are the things that you really remember when you sort of look back on the season. I know we still have 1 race to go, but with 7 races in the books, I think I'd struggle to pick between the 2 of them, but I think they're my 2 that I'm going to nominate for that.
I probably would have said Ritomo Miata myself, and I can't really disagree with Naoya Kazumi over the course of his consistent season. They've scored points in all but 2 of the races, and they were only a place or 2 off points on those occasions. So it's I think it's fairly rife. GT300 is a little bit more complex for me. I'm going to throw a name into the ring, which may not necessarily be obvious going straight in, but my GT300 driver of the year, and I've been thinking about this quite a lot, is actually Sion Koide, considering he came into this season as a rookie driver, having stepped up of F4 last year, to go straight in. They won on debut at Okayama, and at Sugo, we thought that the title was pretty much won for them. It was only the disqualification that took it away from them. So, considering it's his first season, I can't really think any more than Sion Koide as the star turn in GT300. He's just been so unbelievably surprising all year.
Yeah, I think that's a very good pick. Young Sion Koide, like you say, coming from Japanese F4, following in the footsteps of Kakanori Shinoda, of course, was in a similar situation the previous year with Team Up Garage, got a promotion to the GT500 stable for this year, and you have to think that Koide is going to get a similar call sooner or later, if not next year, then certainly in the near future. The other one I would say, just continuing the theme of newcomers, I think Tappei Natori has been very, very impressive, stepping into the seat vacated by Kyoto Fujinami, and really, to just take over from a 2-time champion, and you'd think that there was no difference from looking at the results and the speed. Okay, they have had their fair share of woes this year in the Kondo Racing squad, and there was the crash at Sugo, but I don't think that should be looked upon too harshly for Natori. I think he's been really impressive. I think he's shown that he's a very solid option for Nissan's future as well, as they look to probably refresh their GT500 lineup with some fresh talent. So I'll definitely agree with your pick of Koide, but I'd also give Tepe Notori an honourable mention as well.
Yeah, really strong calls, really strong calls. So the only thing that remains now is to go into the season finale this weekend at Mobility Resort Motegi. And I guess, well, the final word from you, Jamie, what do you really expect to see based on everything that we've learned through the course of the year? Yes, the first race of the season when we didn't have success ballast, when we didn't have fuel flow restrictors, was in the wet. So it was very hard to tell. But what would you expect to see going into the season finale? Who do you think has the best chance, everything being considered, of going for the win? Who's your pick?
I think, it's a tough one. But I think 7 points as a margin between the top two cars is surmountable. I mean, you only need to. I make it sound like it's the simplest thing in the world, but you only need to win the race with the other car third or lower, which can happen, often does happen. We've seen so many championship deciders going to the chasing car. Almost that's been the more common outcome of recent seasons. I just have a feeling that the Michelin factor could be crucial this weekend. I think I saw a vague suggestion that there could be some rain on Sunday. Of course, if it rains, you can't really look beyond the number 3 car because the 2 Michelin Nissans will be very, very strong in the rain. But even if it's dry, I just think that test, the evidence of the test we had at Motegi in September, does make me think that the number 3 car could have an edge. But I think at the same time, you can't underestimate the impact of the Super Formula title win for Miata and the unexpected victory at Autopolis. I think, I never expected Tsuboi and Miata to where do they start? Outside the top 10. They came from, I think it was 12th they came back from.
It was 12.
It was an amazing, plucking the victory from the jaws of defeat, if you like, for them. But the trouble is, Motegi it's a shorter race, 300 kilometers, and it is a very hard circuit to overtake. There won't be much room for strategy. It's not like Autopolis where it's all about tyre selection and you've got 450 kilometers, almost 100 laps to make up for bad qualifying. At Motegi, I think if you don't qualify well, then you're really in a difficult situation. So that's why I think I'm going to tentatively say that the number 3 car, the number 3 Nissan, is my personal pick to win the championship. But now I've said that, I'm sure I'm going to be proven wrong because it seems that Super GT just keeps delivering twists at every possible opportunity. I think this weekend could be no exception. But as you're pressing me to name my pick, then I have to go with the number 3 car.
I know what you mean. I mean, you watch what will happen. We're going to go into the season finale, and then neither of the 2 crews from Toyota and Nissan are going to score points, and ARTA Honda are going to pull off the unbelievable miracle. You watch. It'll just play out. It'll just happen. It's going to be amazing. We cannot wait for the season finale at Mobility Resort Motegi. So do please join us on the Motorsport TV premium service. You can watch it all live as it unfolds this weekend. And of course, you can go back and watch the previous 7 races that we have had over the course of 2023 to get yourself in the zone and catch yourself up ready for an epic season finale. Thank you so much for watching, and we can't wait to be with you when we go ready for qualifying on Saturday and for the race on Sunday. I'm Jake Sanson. He's Jamie Klein. Thank you very much indeed for watching, and we will see you at Motegi. Sayonara.